everybody's here today. We're going to get started. Our first presenter today is Ms. Pamela Moore. Following her will be Malinda Jensen. And then ending the presentation will be Richard Acosta. Without further ado.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. How's everyone? Good. Great. Can I have the clicker? So we're going to tell the story of Detroit and how economic development and workforce development have become really joined at the hip. And so you're going to hear from Malinda Jensen, who is a board member of ours. She is the Director of Business Development at the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. And then Richard Acosta is our Manager of Strategic Operations at Detroit Employment Solutions. So thank you for coming. In order for you to really understand where Detroit is currently and where we're headed, I thought I needed to go back in time and tell you how we got to where we are. So it's going to be somewhat of a history lesson. So I'm going to talk about the golden years. I'm going to talk about the decline that we all know about. I'm going to talk about the state of economic and workforce development. And then I'm going to talk about how we're working to transform not only Detroit, but our workforce and our residents. So the golden years, we all know about the golden years in the Motor City. In the 40s and the post-war years, you know, Detroit was it. We were at 1.8 million people in 1950. Streetcars were coming every 60 seconds in the 40s. We were the fourth largest city. I think we're 17 now. And the big three had 99% of the market share. So we started to see the decline in the 50s and the 60s. The white flight started to occur. Whites started to leave the city of Detroit and move to the suburbs. Single wage earners were in 60% of the families, and the streetcar fleet was sold to Mexico City. And then in the 60s, we all know about Motown, but still, we still saw that flight, and it was with African Americans in the 60s. Some of the upper class African Americans started to leave the city. Freeway construction began, urban sprawl began, and then in 1967 there were the Detroit riots, which is a picture here. So in the 70s and 80s, more decline. However, African Americans started to gain political power in the city of Detroit. 77% of our families with children were headed by married couples. Our imports were reaching 25% of the market, so that was changing the domestic market. Started to be union employer tension, continued white flight, and then there were lots and lots of urban renewal programs. That's in the 70s and 80s. And then in the 90s, 33% of families with children were headed by married couples. So you see that number is starting to decrease. NAFTA, for those that are in workforce development, you know all about the acronyms that we use. The Temporary Assistance for Needy Families and Workforce Investment Act legislation came into existence. And again, more and more African Americans were leaving the city of Detroit. So in 2000, and I want you to just really look at this 10-year period where things really just kind of went over the cliff. Michigan lost 800,000 jobs over that decade. The big three share collapsed below 50%. And out of just those two items, many, many things occurred. So Governor Granholm at the time instituted the No Worker Left Behind project. In 2009, our unemployment was at its peak. And you all know unemployment, that's what's documented. That's not necessarily the number. I always believe that number is at least a third or 50% more than what's documented. But Michigan was also at its peak. Detroit had amongst the highest foreclosures across the country. Crime was very high. High school dropout, very high. There was a study done that revealed 47% of Detroiters were illiterate, functionally illiterate. 90% of our high schools were below the state average. And there was a lot of public corruption going on that we all remember. So just to give you some sense of what the density looked like in the 30s. So the dark green areas, those are people. That's what it looked like in the 30s. Here's what it looked like in 2010. So shrinking population obviously means shrinking revenues. Our property taxes are down, our income taxes are down. Just look at where we've come from and where we are in 2010 in Detroit versus the metro area. So that sprawl continues to happen as people leave the city of Detroit. So this is just a swatch of land in the city of Detroit, just to show you the difference in 1950, how the revenues looked. 185 homes in this area, 540 people, 23 people per acre. Look at this same area in 2010 and look at the difference. So, also in 2010, 20% less than a high school diploma. High school plus, which means some college, 67%, but look at the college graduates, 13% when you compare to the national average. Detroit is mostly African American, however, that's changing every day. That's changing. Our household income, look how it changed from 2000 to 2010, 27,000, and poverty rates still increasing in the city of Detroit. So advanced degrees, we all know that location is important, but the experience and the education of your workforce is also important. So look how we compare to other cities across the country. These are 25-year-olds with a bachelor's degree. So a tale of 5 cities. We like to look at other cities of comparable size. So we're all about the same size, these 5 cities on the bottom. But look at the population in Philadelphia, twice the number of individuals that we have in Detroit. Look at the total jobs in Philadelphia, almost 3 times. And look at the number of jobs per 100 residents in Atlanta, almost 3 times. So only 3 out of 10 Detroiters have jobs in Detroit. 4 out of 5 are African American, and only 1 out of 7 businesses are African American owned. So, I'm going to fast forward a bit to 2012. Our vacant land, currently we have about 1/3 of the land vacant in the city of Detroit. Our union membership is decreasing. Unemployment in 2012 was 18.7%. Violent crimes were very high. We led the nation. Renters versus those that own their own homes, 1-to-1. 1 in 4 Detroit homes are vacant. And 1 in 4 Detroiters have no personal transportation. So that's supposed to be a picture of me. Don't ask. Yeah, with the sledgehammer. Robin Johnson did that. So 15 months of new leadership. So I came into the Department of Workforce Development. It was a city department at the time in December of 2010. So in 2012, I've been there about 15 months. This was around February or so. We had changed our board. We had a 42-member workforce board. We went down to a 25-member board so we could get a quorum and get some work done. We had resolved many of the disallowed costs. We had terminated many of the contractors that were not performing. We had restored some staff accountability, focused on just changing the reputation. We had many, many years of not performing. Improved outcomes, they were improving. It was Mayor Bing's 3rd year, and at the time there was talk of an emergency manager. We had financial advisory boards, we had McKinsey & Company doing diagnostics across the city, trying to determine what business the city of Detroit would remain in. There was a turnaround team. So I was in the mayor's office before I came into the Department of Workforce Development. So there were all these people just running around the mayor's office trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to try to avoid an emergency manager. It was Governor Snyder's 2nd year. He was focused on some of these items, elimination of the single business tax. 5 cities already had an emergency manager. He was talking about right to work. He was talking about Medicaid expansion, early childhood education. And then guess who came to dinner? The state of Michigan paid me a visit in February and said, well, Ms. Moore, we appreciate all your effort in the past 15 months. However, here's a long list of what's still wrong, and we want to know how you're going to correct it. So they took me back 10 years. There were disallowed costs that had still not been resolved. There were just many inefficiencies. So you have to understand that we were inside of a broken system inside of the city of Detroit. So spending grant money in a timely manner was really impossible. So they made me aware of all that was wrong and wanted to hear what our recommendation was going to be. And we had 60 days to provide the state a corrective action plan. So went to my board, and we had already started having conversations about how we were going to fix it. And the recommendation was to move the operations and the services and the programs away from the city of Detroit and put them under a nonprofit. So the mayor supported that recommendation. In May, I went to the Financial Advisory Board, told them the recommendation. They said, great. So this was in February, March, actually, when we first had the conversation. They said, by the way, can you do that by July 1? Well, that wasn't the plan. The plan was maybe over 9 months or 12 months, not 4 or 5 months. So we went about trying to transition by July 1, even though I thought it would be impossible. Went and did a presentation in front of City Council in May. They clapped, said, great, you really thought this whole thing out. We received lots of support from the state. My friend Strader Taylor came in and helped us. We hired lawyers. We went about doing all that we thought what we needed to do to transition. So in May, we started meeting with city departments, started talking about what this transition would look like and what it would take. And in June, we got slammed with a lawsuit from AFSCME that said, you better stop talking about transitioning unless you're taking all of our members. So AFSCME had a contract that expired June 30th. We were leaving on July 1st. Why did we have to recognize the contract was our position. So we hired more lawyers and had to stop all activities. The restraining or temporary restraining order was lifted at the very end of June. The lawsuit was still in, actually the judge had decided that an arbitrator would hear the lawsuit. That temporary restraining order was lifted, which gave us the opportunity to prepare our governance agreement, get it signed by the mayor, create our nonprofit, Detroit Employment Solutions, file those articles of incorporation. The state of Michigan accepted that governance agreement. That was on a Friday. On Monday morning, we opened up as Detroit Employment Solutions, a nonprofit organization. I need you to clap. So that's our Independence Day. Chaos, okay? That's the only way I can describe it. Hopefully the customer never knew what was going on internally. Grant Associates had been procured through the city's process, but we could not sign any contracts, and so we called them on Friday and said, can you get on the plane over the weekend? They did, and helped us open up our one-stops. As a new nonprofit, we had to lay off city workers because that department was going away. July was not a nice month. We hired about 18 individuals. And so just went about transitioning really the work that we thought we could do, in April, May, and June. We had to just continue to do that work, and again, without letting the customer, both the job seeker or the employer, really feel what we were going through. So that's just a picture of staff that must have accidentally got in there. It was grueling. And so what a difference a year makes. It's been a success story. So now we're up to 36 FTEs. We have about 18 subcontractors that deliver the services for us. We have 3 full service one-stops. We're moving right now as we speak. We're going into the neighborhoods. Our one-stop has been downtown for a long time, since 1996. We're coming out of downtown. We really don't need to be downtown. We need to be in the communities and in the neighborhoods of people that need our services. We're moving into 2 Detroit public school buildings where they offer adult education. We're going to stay over on the east side in the Samaritan Center and go to Northwest Activity Center, which is a recreation center affiliated with the city of Detroit. 77 training providers, 12 access centers, Our partner network, over 200, many of them are in the audience today. Customers served, about 6,000 employers we work with. Visitors, over 54,000. We've had over 8,300 placements in the last 12 months, and we've trained 1,700. I like this slide. I was going to take it out, but I just like it because it shows where we've come from. And in the center there, you'll see some policy changes, and you see where WEA came into existence, some of the old Job Training and Partnership Act, the riots. It just kind of shows some events that happened along the way. And here we are. My Mayor Bing is on his way out, and Governor Snyder is still here moving his agenda. And I'm really thankful for the state of Michigan. They were supportive. They were there with us every step of the way, and I could not have done it without them. So there's a new sheriff in Detroit. His name is Kevin Orr, and he is the emergency manager. So obviously we could not keep him away. He is restructuring $20 billion in long-term debt. That's really his priority. He's not going to be able to fix it all in 18 months, which is the length of his contract. But he's privatizing services, and I think we're the model. We are how you move services out of the city, but we're still accountable to the city under the Workforce Investment Act. I'm still accountable to the mayor. I'm still accountable to city council. But we are providing these services and programs on behalf of the city, but we don't have to do it through the city, which has just been a wonderful thing. So we've got a little mayor's race coming up. These are the two finalists. We've got a governor's race happening next year, and then our council, we're going to vote for council members by district, which is going to be new. It's going to change the whole membership of council, and I think those of us that live in Detroit, we're looking forward to that. So this is too busy to read. I just want to highlight a few things. These are some of our accomplishments. We saved over 30% coming away from the city in operating costs. Detroit's fringe benefit rate right now is 103%. Should I say that again? 103% for fringe benefits. Bond payments are rolled up in there, pension, legacy costs, all rolled up in that fringe benefit rate. So we saved a ton of money. We got out of some leases that we had been in under the city. We're meeting WEA performance measures. We're exceeding 13 out of 17. We're at 62% work participation rate for the PATH program. We're doing what and I don't even really need an applause for that. We're just doing what we're supposed to do. But it's been a great year. We're expanding our footprint. We've got a great apprentice program and some other new programs. We purchased new technology, which we could not have done under the city. So our data has integrity now, which it did not under the city. A great financial system that we use. Our software is great. And just again, we're better positioned to engage in more public-private partnerships because no one really wanted to partner with the city of Detroit with all that was going on. So these are the priorities for our work. We had a strategic planning session with the board last year. Youth, we have got to focus on what we're going to do with our young people in the city of Detroit. They are primarily the ones committing crimes. They are the ones that I think really don't see any hope or any opportunities, and so we have to focus on them. So we're going into the schools with our CARES program, which stands for Career Awareness and Readiness Equals Success. We're going in, they're going to earn a work readiness credential. We're going to offer some dual enrollment opportunities. We're going to see where their interests lie. We're going to put them in some vocational training. We're going to make sure they have a paid internship before they graduate. We're going to take data into the schools, and we're going to say, young people, I know you want to be an entertainer or you want to be an athlete or but you need to be a carpenter. And here's what carpenters make. We're going to take that kind of data into the school and information into the schools and tell young people how they can get on that path, because a lot of our young people are not going to a four-year institution. We got some funding to focus on disconnected youth. Those are young people not in school, not working with Excellent Schools Detroit in that effort. We want to use our Education and Youth Council as a model for collective impact. We want to bring everyone into the room that is touching young people in the city of Detroit, and we can all have the same conversation and figure out what our priorities are. Even though we're all in our little silos, we can all at least agree what the 2 or 3 priorities are, and we can all work towards that. Also got some funding from DTE to staff up the recreation centers, so we make sure that our rec centers stay open. So this pie chart on the right just shows what we believe are all the pieces that we need in place and all of the partnerships that we need to make young people successful in the city of Detroit. Work readiness, we hear all the time from employers, doesn't really even matter the education. People don't show up on time, they don't know how to walk, talk, and dress. So just the soft skills are really important. I know Nahid's in here. Soft skills readiness is important, technical skill readiness is important, and basic skills. Typically, our customers that come through the door, they're testing around 8th, 9th grade reading, 5th, 6th grade math. So we've got to bring up all those levels. And employer solutions, Richard's going to talk a little more about that, but we're a demand-driven system. Our employer is the priority customer, finding out what their needs are, what the talent needs are, what the training needs are, and aligning our resources with their needs. And what's new? Everything. Everything is new. So we want to track hires in the city of Detroit. Not only our hires, but as a system, as a workforce system. How many people are we putting into jobs? So that's something we're working on. Community Ventures has been a great partnership. Detroit Future City is the city's 50-year plan. We want to see how we can better be in alignment with that plan and some of the workforce initiatives outlined in that plan. Build Detroit. Lots and lots and lots of infrastructure projects coming to the city of Detroit. We're going to build a little bridge to Canada. We're going to build a new hockey stadium. We're going to build a light rail line up Woodward. That's a lot of skilled trades jobs. So I was in the skilled trades session earlier just to hear what some of the opportunities are. And we have an apprentice program. How do we better prepare Detroiters for these opportunities that are going to start really now? M1 Rail is breaking ground now, and the bridge in the next 7 to 10 years. So how do we prepare people and get them on that apprentice track for those skilled trade opportunities? Pathways to Potential, some of you may know about. We're in 90 schools in the city of Detroit, alongside Department of Human Services, making sure that parents and their children know about the services that are offered through Human Services as well as the workforce agencies. We're coming up with a customer service credential. Detroit is becoming a call center hub. I don't know if it's because we have so much land and so much vacant property, but for whatever reason, there are more and more leads for call centers. Returning citizens, we have a large ex-offender population. We need to focus on them as well. And just some of our youth initiatives that I talked about early. So our mission, to revitalize Detroit by cultivating local workforce talent to align with the needs of the business community. And we could not do that without the partnerships. Our Economic Development Corporation, all of the agencies, some of you are in the audience, and we appreciate you so much. Our faith-based organizations, our community-based organizations, our schools, our philanthropic community. So we have a lot of work to do in Detroit, but we have made great, great, great strides. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Malinda Jensen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Malinda Jensen. I am with the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. And Detroit Economic Growth Corporation is a private, nonprofit organization that leads the economic development activities on behalf of the city of Detroit. So we report to a 60-member board. We are not the city, but we work very closely with the city and its economic development types of departments, being planning and development, building and safety, assessor's office. Today I'm going to talk about our role and how it relates to the community development, the workforce development work that's going on in the city. And it's important to recognize the connection between economic development and workforce development systems. One thing that we're starting to do much better with is that over the years, our organization has been around since 1978. And we've had various staff members that were board members with workforce development, but we never had that strong connection. And since probably the last 3 years, we've made a concerted effort to make sure that we are aligning our work with workforce development. My agency, we primarily meet with businesses, any business, any entrepreneur that wants to do something in Detroit. We kind of brand ourselves as the front door. So when we're meeting with companies that are currently in the city, that are looking to expand and grow, or businesses that are looking to invest in the city and they ask about talent needs, our first conversation is with Detroit Employment Solutions. We've set up a Salesforce portal, which is a community relations database. So when a company makes that request, we can make an electronic pipeline directly to Detroit Employment Solutions so that they can make that outreach to make sure the talent needs are met. And this one thing also in Detroit, there's a large workforce system, so you have a lot of grassroots organizations, you have a lot of different nonprofits that are in the workforce space, and a lot of that is due to the fact that over the past few years, workforce, and I can admit this, was quite a dysfunctional system. And prior to Pam coming aboard and straightening things out, people were trying to address the needs, so therefore there's all these organizations that have been created. But what we've been able to do is really kind of brand Detroit Employment Solutions as the primary pipeline of activity. And if a business needs additional assistance, then we look to DESC to make that partnership with the other organizations. And I have to say it's been quite a very successful model doing it that way. Next part of my conversation is going to talk about Detroit Strategic Framework Plan, and this is the framework for the next 50 years on how Detroit is supposed to look. Some people refer to it as a plan, some people refer to it as a framework, but it's really a long-term visioning statement. And what has happened over the past 2 years, there were several international planners and bright minds that came to Detroit, and they did a lot of studies, they met with community groups, and they came up with a framework of how Detroit's supposed to look in the next 5 years out to the next 50 years. And as a result of this plan, the organization has now created a program management office, and they're at the point where they're now in the implementation phase. And the strategic directions that guide the overall plan are twofold. We're using this framework or plan as a place-based strategy for growth, and also there's an equity component to the plan where we're providing an economic opportunity for all Detroiters. This next slide represents the baseline or the foundation for the place-based strategy. What we were able to identify is that there's significant areas of the city where there are natural assets for job growth to occur. And we have identified primary employment centers, and these are areas where we've been able to witness growth with the existing employment base. And they're also color-coded by the four primary sectors, being industrial new economy, which is like the IT, creative companies, new economies, eds and meds, will be like your anchor institutions in Midtown Detroit, if you're familiar with that area. And then once again, new economy, which is basically in our central business district. And we use this as a guiding document, so when a business is looking to expand in Detroit, we really want to be able to create density, and we're trying to identify where there's sites available or underutilized buildings where we can either matchmake, because a lot of times a business may be looking to bring their suppliers to Detroit, and if we can find space and increase density, then there's a greater likelihood that the area will be more successful, and then there's opportunities for local job growth. In the second slide, the second slide represents the secondary employment districts, and these areas are not as prevalent as the primary districts, but we understand that there's a number of smaller areas where there's significant industrial activity. And another primary philosophy of the plan is that a lot of people focus on the population growth in the city of Detroit over the last 50, 60, 70 years. And it's not so much about increasing the population in Detroit. If we get up to 1 million people, that's great, but really the goal is to increase the number of job centers in Detroit. We have to be able to affect our tax base. And by doing that, we want to make sure that we identify the areas where you already have businesses growing. Some of these areas are adjacent to existing residential areas, and more than likely represent areas where, in Pam's slides, where she showed the vacancy, we're looking at, there's a lot of businesses, surprisingly, that are growing and they're adjacent to neighborhoods. So through some of the tax incentives that still remain available with the state of Michigan, we're able to freeze property values, we're able to couple that with different workforce subsidies. We work very closely with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, also known as the MEDC, to couple that with some of their more innovative programs such as the Michigan Business Development a subsidy or the community revitalization. And this is a way where we can enhance existing buildings or existing sites. And there's one project in particular that is coming online, and it's in Southwest Detroit, and it's on a vacant piece of property. And we were able to have the MEDC invest dollars through their Michigan Business Development Corporation to help this Tier 1 automotive supplier. And what's great about this particular project is that most of the jobs, now granted, a lot of them are assembly, these are the types of jobs that will put a lot of Detroiters back to work. So we're very excited about being able to land that project in Detroit because it is an Ohio-based company. And then also, as I was saying before, job growth is the key to Detroit's future. Again, we need to make sure that we increase the tax base. Right now, if you don't have a tax base, you're not going to be able to provide services. And as Pam alluded to with emergency manager, or they're looking at how do we adjust the millage rate. There's so many issues that are being studied at this time. And Detroit has a significant, our tax rates are quite high compared to other communities in the city. So we want to make sure that we are addressing that issue. And the more businesses that we can bring into the city, then there's an opportunity to kind of spread that burden. Because people want to make sure that they have these services met. And right now, that's a challenge. And when we meet with businesses, we're trying to be very creative in assisting businesses because we don't want to lose any of the businesses to the suburbs or to other states. And in addition to what we're doing with some of these existing companies, when you look at a lot of the businesses that are starting to grow in our downtown area or midtown area, a lot of these are knowledge-based companies. So you have a variety of jobs that are coming to Detroit. And quite honestly, a lot of these jobs, because of the educational and experience requirements, we, in some instances, don't affect the unemployment rate of Detroit because the Detroiters that are working currently, most of them work outside of the city. So this is an opportunity to really expand the different types of clusters that are starting to be invested in Detroit because we wanted to have opportunities for Detroiters to work in Detroit. Another thing that's quite, we're very sensitive to the fact that this whole growth and development in Detroit must be equitable. And I don't know if everyone is following the stories of what's going on in Detroit with Dan Gilbert and Rock Ventures and the number of companies that he's bringing to the city, the types of buildings and real estate that he's acquiring. Detroit's downtown area looks quite different if you haven't been there in several years. And we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity for, to make a living wage. It's very important. And we found that to really be able to have the greatest opportunity for impact in the labor force, a person needs to have a high school degree and some college. We believe that that might be the sweet spot. If we can identify jobs for that particular population group, then I would say that we are a success. Unfortunately, as Pam alluded to, there's a lot of people that cannot pass, beyond the 7th, 8th grade reading, 5th and 6th grade math. We still have to address those issues. So it's this dueling system. You have to meet the needs of employers. In most instances, when they're looking to cite a project in your city, one of the first questions will be, what's the workforce like? Because they don't want to make that investment and have to have the problems of finding the talent. And I believe DESC has several programs underway with Detroit Public Schools, with Excellence Detroit, so they're looking to address that issue. And what I want to talk about here is some of the 4 pillars, again mentioned in Detroit Future Cities. These are the clusters where we believe that we will have the greatest likelihood for success, and increase in the employment base. And the first one is education and medical, is historically known as EDS and Meds. We have a very strong medical cluster in the Midtown area. We've identified another one on McNichols, which is in Northwest Detroit, for those who are familiar with the city. And this really represents any type of position in the healthcare and educational fields of study. We, like I said, this is one opportunity for increase in employment base. The second area is industrial. Manufacturing is our bread and butter. It's not going to produce the number of jobs that it once did before, but there's a lot of opportunities for assembly work to advanced manufacturing because businesses or companies are looking for just-in-time opportunities. So we've been fortunate to have significant production facilities owned by General Motors and Chrysler. And the project that I alluded to earlier, they are a Tier 1 automotive for Ford, and they needed to be near the Rouge steel plant. So it works out very well for us to make sure that we're training our talent to meet those manufacturing needs. And it really extends just beyond automotive. You have the food processing, which is our Eastern Market area, metals manufacturing, transportation, and there's also a construction piece that we need to begin to address because of the future construction projects that are coming down the pipeline. And again, these are the locations at the bottom, just correlate with the maps that I did show you earlier. And I think that's important because a lot of people feel that Detroit only has jobs available in the Central Business District and Midtown. And there are jobs available all across the city. It's just important that we do the appropriate matchmaking. The third category is new economy, and sometimes this is referred to as the creative class. It's the information technology, it's advertising, marketing. Quicken Loans falls into this category, being like a mortgage lending system. And what's great is that, again, with General Motors downtown, they've encouraged their suppliers to be in Detroit. So again, we're actually benefiting from some of the informal policies that our large anchor institutions have instilled to support Detroit's revitalization. And in the downtown, midtown, and Corktown area, it's just happening organically. It's at the point now we don't have to give as many incentives, we don't give abatements. They want to be close to Detroit. They see opportunities being close to their customer base. And the fourth area is local entrepreneurship. And we've created a program at Detroit Economic Growth Corporation called D2D, and it feeds into the Michigan Pure Business Connect. And what it is looking at how you identify your large procurement buyers in the city. So in this case, we've identified 15 buyers, primarily in the professional services field, and we are connecting them with smaller Detroit-based businesses for procurement opportunities. So we've had meetings with the senior leadership of Quicken, CompuWare, Ernst Young, Detroit DTE Energy, Wayne State University, and they are looking to expand these procurement opportunities to smaller businesses. And this is important because we believe over time, as these smaller businesses grow, then there's an opportunity for additional local hiring. And we're focusing on really like a lot of small discretionary spend opportunities right now. So it's facilities management, it's procuring of catering, and the business community seems to be quite receptive to it. So this program is being sponsored by the New Economies Initiative, which is a philanthropic foundational focused organization. Like 10 foundations came together, each invested $10 million. And this is a way to increase opportunity in Detroit. And also the informal economy. Pam mentioned that, I think you said like 1 in 7 entrepreneurs or there's Black-owned businesses. And that's just this problematic for the city of Detroit. When you look at the number of minorities in Detroit, the number of entrepreneurs, the percentage should be much higher. And what we find out of that small percentage, a lot of the businesses are lifestyle businesses, so they're not the ones that are really creating long-standing revenue. And that's one of the agenda items of Detroit Future Cities, to figure out a way to attack that over the next 5 years. And Prosper US, or Prosper Us, is an initiative that has been created by the philanthropic community, and they're looking at targeting more like home-based businesses, providing them with technical assistance so that they can grow and go beyond the sole proprietorship and to hire more people. So right now, Prosper Us is located in 3 separate areas of Detroit, and each location is adjacent to specific ethnicity. So you have African American, Latino, and Arab American. So the next steps for Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, like I said, we do a lot of stuff. So depending on where emergency manager or goes with things, our role may expand, it may constrict. We're just very flexible and nimble. But when it comes down to what our organization is going to do with the workforce system, we want to really be able to expand the employment districts that have been identified. We really think if we can get more businesses to physically locate in those areas, it increases the density, and that's a way to strengthen the city of Detroit. And we're also, like I said, we're prioritizing the redevelopment of these districts. We've hired more staff. We're going out and meeting with business owners. We're going to help them with marketing of underutilized space. This is an opportunity for us to be really creative, because this opportunity is only coming once. So this is one where we're going to go out and we're going to test the market, we're going to be innovative, and we're going to see what works. And most importantly, is the process must be transparent. Again, Pam alluded to the political chaos that has gone on over the most recently the last 10 years. And we want to make sure that the changes that we make, will be engaging to all members of the community. So we're very sensitive to that, and we want to be predictable. So our methodology, we're relying on Detroit Future Cities. Like I said, the program management office is housed within Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. We are responsive to the philanthropic community who has funded this initiative, and all of our decisions, be it in my unit, in our project management unit, can all be linked back to Detroit Future Cities as that one guiding document. All right, that's it. Thank you very much.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Richard Acosta. I'm the Strategic Operations Manager for the Detroit Employment Solutions Corporation One-Stop Service Centers. I am with going back. Sorry. First time using this clipper, guys.
One more.
All right, so as Pamela had mentioned earlier, I'm with a company called Brand Associates, and we have expertise in one-stop operations, the administration of training funds, and dealing particularly with special populations. And one of the things that's a little bit different with Brand Associates is that our model is really business-driven, and it always has been. And so in coming to Detroit, it was really kind of turning the culture on its head a little bit, where we weren't looking from the talent first. We were really looking at what business needed, what industries needed, and what the projected needs would be, so it could inform our service delivery strategies. And so in the immediate, the first thing that we had to do as soon as we came to Detroit was to meet with people that had their ears to the ground, like DEGC, like MEDC, Wayne County Edge, Midtown Detroit, people that are already doing this work in the interim, and really asking them, what are you hearing from employers? Anyone who has dealt at all with labor market information, you already know by the time you get it, it's already outdated. Okay, and so using that as a backdrop, we really wanted to be more dynamic and more responsive. As Malinda had mentioned, one of the challenges was that we were coming into a system that had this reputation of not being responsive, where businesses were really looking for smaller agencies or outside organizations to meet their workforce needs, where really it didn't have to be the case if we could fix some of those fundamental issues. And so one of the things that we did is we implemented the use of new technologies that we didn't have here before. For example, Salesforce. Salesforce is a customer relationship management tool. We have a robust business services team, but we definitely wanted to multiply the force of our business services professionals. And so we aligned ourselves with DEGC. We gave them access to our Salesforce database, where any one of their staff members that's meeting with a company, they find out about a workforce need, they can populate our system with a lead, and we respond to that lead within 24 hours. So when we talk about being responsive, it's within the next day you have somebody reaching out to you that already knows what the conversation was, and we really reduce fatigue of employers. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you have 15 different agencies calling the same employer, because it reduces the level of engagement. When we do approach them as a real galvanized, unified front, it makes us look much more organized.